What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Happy Monday. A lot going on this weekend. We did a ton of videos. I was in Philadelphia for most of it, but we had commitments from Ashari Charles, commitments from JJ Edwards. I'm not sure we had any other ones, but it felt like we had a bunch just because there's so much action. Big visit weekend. So we did all that. 2 shows on the weekend. We don't stop here on Canes Insight. Like and subscribe if you want content every day of the week, plus weekends, plus extra. You know where to go, CanesInsight.com. And if you need help with an accident for you or someone you care about, you know where to go. Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Dial 1-800-747-3733, 1-800-747-FREE, and take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. All right. Crystal ball starting to roll in. Those of you who are new around here, new to recruiting, crystal ball, that is when recruiting insiders from various services. Usually we focus on national guys or maybe rival fan bases because they're the ones that have other info, put in predictions for players, right? So if you're a Miami fan, you get the folks at 247 to do a great job. Other folks putting in crystal balls for Miami targets. But I really like to look at the national guys and the rival fans because they have access to info that, thus us who are Miami insiders do not have. So that always catches my attention. Steve Wilfong, national guy, 4on3. Been a little more hit or miss lately, but still someone with a great reputation and deep contacts in various different schools and with agents and all that kind of stuff. He put in a couple big predictions for Miami Hurricane targets. We're going to get on that, as well as some feedback from up in Ohio State on Derek Cooper, who might be Miami's top target left on the board. He visited Ohio State this weekend. Interesting stuff coming out of Ohio State. Folks fired up this morning. Brandon, let's have a great week. Talk about Zach Turner here. We'll get to that in a second. Canes got always fired up. Everybody is ready to rock on this Monday. He'll say no pizza. The show will be elite. I don't know about that, man. It's always harder without my partner in crime. Pete's out there in Madrid. I think he's on siesta right now. He'll probably be doing some content though later on today. Got a little bit of a time delay here. So yeah, man, we are fired up for the weekend or for the week. And fired up about what happened this weekend with some official visitors. Even some guys didn't make official visits, seem to be trending towards Miami. So let's get right into it with the first crystal ball prediction, which to me is kind of the most interesting one, given the circumstances of the whole deal. And that is Orange County wide receiver Vance Spafford, one of the top 100 players in the country. There you see on CanesInsight.com, 7.44 million posting, counting. My guy Lynn Dien posting the crystal ball from Steve Wilfong with 60% confidence that Vance Spafford, that top 100 receiver from Orange County, will be committing to the University of Miami. That was unofficial. This is a prediction, but it is a big, big prediction. So why is this interesting? A couple reasons. Number one, Vance Spafford didn't visit this weekend. So he's a Georgia commit. That's the first part of it. He's a Georgia commit, even though he's all the way up in Orange County. Visited this spring unofficially. I saw him there at one of the practices. Not the most physically imposing guy. It's amazing how dominant he is when you see him on the field. There's a player I saw in person at the On3 championship maybe a year and a half ago when he was a younger player, and he was cooking everybody, destroying Raw Miami, which had a bunch of high-end, in-state Florida, Miami national guys at defensive back. This little guy was cooking them deep, showing off his speed. But Vance Spafford, major target for the Canes. Like I said, visit unofficially. Georgia commit. Washington's in the mix. UCLA's in the mix, closer to home there on the Pacific. But Georgia was the team with the commitment. He visited Georgia last weekend. The thought was he's going to visit Miami this past weekend, and I know the information I had and others had was that good chance that he would flip to the Miami Hurricanes at that time. He didn't make the visit. Said he was sick. Apparently he is sick. I mean, I don't have any reason to doubt him. He's not participating in the 5-star challenge, which is like a national competition with some of the best players in the country, because he is sick. So he's sick. That's legit. But, there's always the thought of the business of recruiting, all that kind of stuff playing into him not visiting. Miami wanted to get him in potentially later in the weekend, wasn't able to do so. So, really, you had a lot of momentum and then some negativity there in the recruitment. But sure enough, talking to Miami sources, they still felt confident even after the cancellation of the visit. And then you see this right now, Steve Wilfong with the crystal ball to the Miami Hurricanes for Van Spafford. And why is it important to get a Van Spafford? What's the appeal of this player? Well, how about we look at this right here, which is his Twitter profile. This is last year. This is basically about, almost a year ago, back last July 2nd. The Future 50, these are all the best underclassmen in the country. So these were the guys that are going to be seniors here. Yeah, this was actually before his junior year, but kind of the next wave up that's about to be recruited was before again last season. So he ran, you see laser times, and he ran a 4.35 laser on that time. I believe he also runs a 10.6 in the 100 meters. So you're talking legit verified speed. There you go. And if you don't believe the lasers, you could believe just sort of the comparison part of it. There were all the big time players in next year's class were there. I mean, I guess this year's class, at that time, it was next year's class. So the class of 2026, they were all there. And the fastest man at that event, apples to apples, was Vance Spafford. So you were talking about one of the fastest players in America, not quicker than fast. A lot of times with these white guys, you hear it, it's these guys, this guy's quicker than fast. Vance Spafford is quick and fast, which is why the comparison I've always used for his game, at least in the context of a Shannon Dawson offense, is Tank Dell. Of course, when Shannon Dawson was at Houston, had a top 10 offense there. Tank Dell was his guy, and this guy reminds me a lot of Tank Dell, a little bigger than Tank Dell, but not much bigger. You see the release right there. It's a polished player on top of just having speed and quickness. This guy knows what to do. Look at him go up for the ball there. Extremely productive at his high school. I think he had like almost 1,300 yards. Receiver production is a stat that translates to the next level. They've done studies on, guys that get onto the NFL level and say, what translated from high school, what didn't. One thing that definitely translates at the receiver position is production. Guys who get open, catch the ball, they tend to be pretty good players. It's not like this guy's going to like, some dominant team that like a Matter Day that just walks up there and destroys people. I mean, he is the guy for his team. And look at the moves, man. I mean, he's beating guys off the line. The speed is there. He's tough after the catch. These are game by game clips, as you can see. It's not like they're just cutting up all his best plays at once. You're going game by game. Look at him lay that blocks, physicality, even though he's not the biggest guy in the world. Jeff Lynn asking, is he another Braxton Berrios? They're slot receivers, right? Braxton was a very good tester, and Braxton did have speed. He had a 102-yard kickoff return in the NFL. You don't do that unless you're pretty fast. He also was an all-pro kick returner, or at least overall returner, so punt and kick at the NFL level as a first-team All-Pro. You're first-team All-Pro in the NFL in those positions. You are fast. But I think Spafford, just in terms of pure speed and play speed, has a little more than Berrios. I think he's just more of a big play threat than Berrios. Berrios is a little thicker. I remember seeing Berrios at the same age, who's built more like a running back. Spafford's skinny. I use the Tank Dell comparison for a lot of reasons. Their build is one of them. They're not thick guys like Restrepo was like a very thickly built guy. Berrios, his weight fluctuated, but he was pretty strong. Jason Lopez, who we've talked about on recent shows, visited this past week in Miami, a thicker built guy. Spafford's a lighter build, but just in terms of like, again, game-breaking speed, this would be the fastest receiver we've had since, I think, Philip Dorsett, right? I mean, Stacey Coley was pretty fast. Mark Pope had some straight line speed. But I think in terms of just overall speed, to me, the fastest guy we've had since Dorsett, if we were able to get this one done, and land a Vance Spafford. Yeah, remember, like and subscribe to the show. Appreciate you, Birdstone. Shout out to the villains. Like and subscribe, man. We're going every single day. Question from Brandon. Would we take Evans, Spafford, Lopez, and Keys Russell? I definitely would take Evans. That one could happen this week. There's the speed here on Spafford. Lopez would definitely take Lopez. And in fact, I asked directly, would you take Spafford and Lopez before the weekend? It looked like Spafford was still visiting. The answer was absolutely. If Spafford says, I want to come to Miami, and Lopez says, I want to come to Miami, guess what? They're both Miami Hurricanes. And then Keys Russell, I think those guys are always +1. They're like in that Derek Cooper category where if a Tristan Keys or a Calvin Russell calls and says, I want to be a Cane, and obviously the NIL numbers, something that's within the realm of what can be done. I think both those, either one of those guys would have a spot. So I do believe Miami would take all four. Realistically, all five of those guys. Realistically, I think you're probably looking closer to three, but it could be four, right? With Vance Spafford and then maybe, Tristan Keys, kind of like your home run situation there, or Calvin Russell. Again, look at that speed, man. This guy just has elite speed. Martin Dubé, live from Botswana in Africa. I miss the days when we'd be excited that a 4-star would visit Miami, along with the stress of losing them. Now we take 4 stars for granted. Yeah, man, it's first world problems right here at the recruiting. Now, I will say, wide receiver, that's a position where you want to get over the hump. You're getting 4-star players, you're getting highly rated players, but you want those true impact guys. You want wide receivers that are shaking Roger Goodell's hand. I think that's the big test for the Miami Hurricanes. LSU's there. Ohio State's there. You want the Miami Hurricanes to be there. I think Vance Spafford is that kind of guy. Look at that move at the line. You think of Vlad McConkey, what he's doing. Obviously, it's an easy comparison because he's a white guy. But, Vlad McConkey was a 4-3 guy. Again, Tank Dell comparison I've used in the past. I'm trying to think of some smaller guys that have legitimate quickness and speed combos. Because that's what we're looking at here with Vance Spafford. When you're the fastest man with all the best players in the country there, and you run a 4.35 laser, and you're running 10.6 in the 100, I mean, that's elite speed. Philip Dorsett, I think, is a comparison I would use probably as far as guys that we've had, although he might have a little more quickness at the same age than Dorsett. Look at that play right there. I love how he catches at full speed, hands out, plucking the ball, not slowing down to get it. It's one thing to be fast. It's one thing to play fast. Part of that is being able to catch the ball full speed without slowing down. Look at the route running. Just a complete player, man. Silk saying, how come Miami could only afford Russell or Keys, but LSU can get Keys and Tristan and lead for Bobby Feaster? I mean, look, let's see how the whole thing plays out. We'll see how this all shakes out when it's all said and done. Miami's NIL is as competitive as anybody in the country. We're going to talk about some of those guys. So these are big classes right now, right? I think a trend you're seeing. I know my guy Gabby did a mock class for 247, which I thought looked pretty good. A lot of things I agree with there, but these classes are getting bigger. USC might take like 30 plus this year. Miami, I know Gabby's mock class had us at 28, and there was no name there that I was like, oh, this is excessive. So I could see us at that number. And you have 105 scholarships. So some guys are going to be more, Freddie Wilson, who we're not going to talk about today, but defensive tackle, even more than like 105 type of guy where quality depth and potentially a guy that becomes a starter and an impactful player down the road. So you're going to take more guys like that. And also, you're going to get guys like Spafford and other guys we'll talk about here today with the hope that you don't have to go into the portal and spend insane money like Auburn spent on Eric Singleton or, some of these other, Zachariah Branch, what he cost for Georgia. You have to get those guys out of high school. I think receiver's a position you can get in the portal, but I'd love to land some of these dynamic players out of high school like Ohio State's been doing, like LSU's been doing. I'm a big portal quarterback guy, as people know, but wide receiver, to me, the ideal model for wide receiver is going to be an LSU or an Ohio State. And this kind of guy, he was committed to Georgia, which is a similarly big-time program. Maybe not the receiver history, but, I mean, this is a top 75 player. I think with the physical traits and the ability he has, you're talking about a legitimate potential star player. 352 MLW, are Ray Joseph and Nikar 10-6 guys? No, I mean, not even close. 10-6 is flying. I mean, again, we're talking more in the Philip Dorsett category. Let me see Philip Dorsett and here, let's take a look here just to compare because I love to compare track times over the years. Dorsett ran in college, so he's got a lot of different times. But in high school, his best time was 10.51. I believe that might have been as a senior. So Vance Spafford as a junior, he ran, let's see what he ran here as a junior. Actually, this was as a sophomore. So as a sophomore, he ran 10.69. I don't know if he ran this year, but I mean, we're talking about, big time speed on both of those dudes. So yeah, a lot of action going on. Martin Dubé saying, read between the lines, it looks like Tristan Keys is the prize and the money for Calvin Russell will be for defensive tackles. And they'd love Calvin Russell too. So, we'll see. Hey, DB, straight. If we get Spafford and Lopez, we'd be disappointed if no Keys or Russell, because Lopez and Spafford would be a very lethal combination. I would love to get Lopez and Spafford, two of my favorite guys. I'd love to get Tristan Keys, man. I just think that's the kind of guy we haven't been getting, and I think that will be huge. All right, some more questions I'll take here before we transition to the next crystal ball. And that's going to be from John Z. It says, "Don't want Freddie Wilson at defensive tackle. We got to do better there." Remember, we're trying to build a room at defensive tackle, right? You do not want to be going to. We had a situation now where people want us to go in the portal and get a fourth defensive tackle. If we have a fourth defensive tackle, I'd rather have that be a homegrown player, preferably someone that you've worked over time. Freddie Wilson comes in, not going to cost you a ton. You've had him at camp, you've seen him, you like him, you develop him over years, and now your four tackles homegrown as opposed to overpaying for a guy to be your fourth defensive tackle. I think that's the vision with that. CanesInSight coffee, croquetas, preferably from Islas Canarias, and my favorite morning three-piece. Shout out to you, Rock Style Monster. We need a 340-pound DT from Fresh. Everybody, I would love Vince Wilfork. I think everybody would. But the key is going to be disruption. I know that you look at the video we did with Lance Roppers last week, who really broke down Heatherman's defense. This nose tackle in this defense, they're trying to get to the other side of the line of scrimmage. I mean, you need power, you need some strength, but they're not necessarily, the biggest guys in the world. 352. Why didn't we prioritize TJ Moore, who's now at Clemson? We were after him, but it never seemed to be all in waiting on Jeremiah. Yeah, I think that might have been it. I know that was all about Jeremiah that year. It's disappointing that couldn't get done. Canes Cat, any update on Lamar Brown? I keep hearing James Johnson at that defensive tackle spot more so than Lamar Brown. I never got a lot. We were in it with Lamar Brown, but I never got like a ton of confidence. Like, hey, he's coming. All right, switching gears to the next crystal ball for the Miami Hurricanes, and it's definitely a big one. One of my favorite players in the country. As we scroll down, Zachary Turner, a tight end from Duncanville. He's a 3-star there on 3. I believe he is a composite 4-star, and I think that's really more along the lines of where his talent is. Just for my personal opinion, this is the D-Money opinion. Take it for what it is. This is one of my favorite players in the country. Elijah Lofton. I almost called him Brevin Jordan. Elijah Lofton 2 years ago was one of my favorite players in the country from the start. And I see a lot of similarities between Elijah Lofton and Zachary Turner. I know others do as well. They wear the number 9. That one's kind of obvious. They're both undersized tight ends, really more offensive weapons. Brevin Jordan went to one of the best teams in the country, one of the best schools in the country. I keep calling him Brevin Jordan, same program. Elijah Lofton and Brevin Jordan went to one of the best programs in the country in Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. Zachary Turner goes to Duncanville, which is an outstanding program in Texas. And both of these guys are just tremendous all-around football players, tough, instinctive, fast, you name it. I think Turner more of a receiver, whereas Lofton, I think he's more of a running back. But they both, really kind of fit in that tight end H-back role. Fresh is saying he's a 3-star. He's a 3-star on all 3, and I believe 247, but he's a 4-star on the composite, the industry ranking. And I think, again, we'll watch the film, but I'm telling you, I think that when you look at Zachary Turner, you're talking about a 4-star talent. If you don't believe me, let's turn on the tape. Let's look at what we're talking about with Zachary Turner, why I think he is one of the absolute legitimate best players in the country, and one of the kind of, to me, the targets here for the Canes that you're dying to land. At least I am dying to land. I just think this guy is absolutely spectacular. So here we go. Turn on the tape. Again, this is Duncanville. This is a big-time program in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Quarterback Keelan Russell went to Alabama. Look at the speed, man. These are real guys chasing. These are guys who are going to play football for a living here, chasing him, and he is just cooking them. I really think he could probably be a wide receiver. You see him in some of his 7-on-7 highlights. He's catching passes, doing backflips. This is a big-time athlete. You see him. He really, to me, is an oversized receiver with the speed and twitch and instincts to get it done. We talked about how productivity is so important with wide receivers, that you want guys. Look at the toughness there, which I love. Look at the core strength and balance. I love guys that have that core strength to break tackles at receiver. You don't want guys that can get knocked over easily. They get knocked off their routes. They can't catch over the middle. This guy can do all that, plus the run after catch. Statistically outstanding, 933 yards on only 58 catches, 16 touchdowns. This is, again, for a big-time program. Look at him block and just bury guys. I absolutely love this guy. One similarity from him and Lofton, and I told the story on a previous podcast, which is that when Miami was recruiting Elijah Lofton, they asked the Chaminade guys, Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader, all those guys, who the best player they faced was. And Jeremiah Smith in particular was like, man, Lofton's the dude. Number 9 for Bishop Gorman. That guy is the best player we've seen all year. He's unreal. Yeah, I think he scored like 5 touchdowns against Chaminade. So like, the real players know who the real players are. And I heard when it comes to Turner, when they asked Texas guys and Texas coaches, who's the best guy around, they're all talking about this dude. You can see what the plays he's making and the productivity he has. Like Trey Moore says, he makes fast people look not fast. That is absolutely the case. So really, really talented guy. I think this is the one that, in terms of the tight ends, and we're after, I think Isaiah Briggs, good chance we get him tomorrow as a commit, and he's got a lot of people excited in Coral Gables. But if you're asking me, and this is my opinion, this is the CanesInSight the money opinion. This is not necessarily, I do not speak for the staff or for anybody else when I say this, but my favorite guy is this guy right here, and we'd love to get him. He visited SMU, which a lot of people thought might go all in for him. Miami's able to I think get an edge on SMU, which is why you're seeing the crystal balls. He visited Oklahoma this past week, and Oklahoma thinks they got a chance here. And I would not dismiss Oklahoma, who just had that visit, because look at that route. Because as we learned with John Mateer, who's also from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Oklahoma is kind of like a home team for those guys. You think of Dallas-Fort Worth, you think Texas teams at A&M, University of Texas, but really the Oklahoma Sooners, as far as the traditional blue bloods, I know you have SMU and you have TCU, but in terms of the traditional blue bloods, Oklahoma is probably the closest one to that area. So they get a lot of guys from that area. John Mateer, their quarterback, being one example. So there are some advantages for Oklahoma with a guy like Turner. I think if you're Miami, your tight end tradition, the fact that your offense was so dynamic last year with Elijah Arroyo going high like he did, the fact that Elijah Lofton is a focal guy, and I think I know Turner visited for spring. I saw him there, legitimate 225-pound player. They measured him in. I think he was there when he saw Elijah Lofton playing. And if he saw any practice, which I know he did, and Elijah Lofton practice, which I think he practiced pretty much every position or every practice, he saw that Elijah Lofton getting catch after catch after catch, because that's how the whole spring was. Elijah Lofton, a lot of people think, myself included, best player on the team. So he saw how they use Elijah Lofton. Very easy to say, hey, you see number 9? That's you. You see Elijah Arroyo last year on tape, getting drafted high? That's you. And again, I think the way he runs routes, his strength to break tackles, his twitchiness, his toughness, this is an instant impact player. There you see again, catch, kind of like with Spafford. It's one thing to be fast. It's one thing to not slow down when you catch the ball over the middle, to pluck the ball with your hands, and to really use that speed as opposed to just being like a track guy. This is definitely not a track guy, nor is Van Spafford. These are football players, and I'm really, really fired up about this guy. Some questions on Hezzy Kent in the chat. I see Lagoon saying it looks like we're focused on Turner and Briggs and not Kent. I mean, and Devonair asking about Kent. We would love to get Kent. Hezzy Kent's a stud, big 290-pounder from Brunswick, Georgia. Texas is in there. Florida's in there, which is kind of one of the nearby schools. Tallahassee's in there. He's up there by the Florida-Georgia border in Brunswick. There's a lot of interest in Hezzy Kent. We got him down for an official. We had him down for an unofficial. Miami would love, love, love to land Hezzy Kent. They love nothing more. But there's other schools involved there. I think we have more momentum right now with Turner and with Briggs. Briggs, more of your traditional tight end height at 6'5", but I think he's actually lighter than Turner. So both of these guys are kind of like oversized wide receivers, different frames. I think Miami, if you don't get you'd like Hezzy Kent to just be your big inline monster. If you can't get that done, we'll see. Maybe you recruit somebody like that. Maybe you get someone in the portal. You got Luka Gilbert last year. I think is going to have that role for a few years. Big inline, powerful guy. And then these other two, kind of more your oversized receivers who can cause a lot of problems. And you see these guys in the pros. I mean, Travis Kelce, he'll block, but he's there to catch passes from Mahomes. There's a million guys like that. I'd put these guys in that category, not in that class. I mean, not saying they're going to be the best of all time, but you know what I mean? That you're getting these guys, Zach Turner and Izzy Briggs, because you think they're going to be really good receivers for you and help you that way. Over 1,000 on live right now. Remember to like and subscribe to the show, share the show. Appreciate you guys joining us here every morning, man. So I get more and more in these morning shows, trying to be more consistent with what we do, delivering the CanesInSight podcast. Look at that block from Zachary Turner, man. I love the fact that this guy's physical on top of being athletic. So we'll see how this goes. Again, I think Oklahoma is the school I'm watching now as far as the last hurdle because of all the things that Oklahoma provides. He was just there on a visit, but I like the idea of this guy in orange and green. I've always heard confidence from the Canes on him, and now you're seeing, again, national people start to jump on board with Zachary Turner for the Miami Hurricanes. Look at these long highlights, man. You know when a guy's got a highlight this long with all these different kinds of catches that he's a real dude. Look at him. I love this guy, man. You see him fall forward for extra yards. I like guys that catch touchdowns and do backflips, man. I'm a sucker for that. I'm easily impressed. Hassan, thanks to you, man. Don't forget the like button. Yeah, appreciate you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. All right, flip it to the next topic. It is not a crystal ball necessarily, right? This is not a crystal ball, but this is a prediction. And let's say it differently. It's not a crystal ball. It's not even a prediction. This is more just buzz from national writers. I've said before, I think in my opinion, the top target left on the board for the Canes is Derek Cooper, running back from Chaminade. I know they're absolutely over their heels for this guy. He's a 5-star player, runs a 10.7, 6'1", 205, 210. Looks like the Predator in person, physical, highly productive for a great program, plays offense, plays defense. You name it, this guy's a complete monster. We'll pull up the film in a second. He's visited the best schools in the country. That's what kind of player he is. Visited Miami, unofficially and officially a bunch. Visited Georgia, visited Texas, I believe. Florida State, not quite one of those top schools in the country, but he was there as well. So, he's all over the place. And this weekend was at Ohio State, which if you're, worried about top schools, they just won the national championship. They just had 2 running backs drafted in the second round. They're a pretty impressive option. I mean, let's be real about it, as much as we hate the Buckeyes. So here is what Ohio State is saying about Derek Cooper. And I always like to go behind enemy lines, right? Here's what they're saying. Said Ohio State wanted to add either Savion Hitter, who, that's one of the, I can't imagine there's too many better players than him, or Derek Cooper to favor Aki, someone who Miami actually recruited and had on campus, who's since committed to Ohio State in this recruiting class. So trying to pair favor Aki with one of those other two. They hosted Cooper for an official visit over the weekend. From a pure business standpoint, when you hear stuff like that, the hedging starts. It went really well. Cooper and his family like what Buckeyes have to offer: football, development, academic support, staff culture, and so on. I'm sure it was great. They won the national championship. It's going to be an impressive visit. There's also long been a thought that the preference for Cooper and those close to him that he would leave home for college, meaning Georgia and OSU, were in a more favorable position than Miami. I'm not sure about that, but that's what these guys have been saying. Where I'm not feeling so great about things right now, and again, this is Ohio State talking, is that in speaking with sources, I think this recruitment is going to become an NIL recruitment. And I don't see Ohio State or Georgia being the top bidder in this recruitment from what I am told. Now, the Buckeyes and Bulldogs both have quote-unquote competitive offers for a running back of Cooper's caliber at the high school ranks. But with what I am told, the Hurricanes have in front of the Cooper camp, and with this becoming the italicized factor in the race, I would pick the U as of now for the talented backs. Let's call that a crystal ball from Ohio State side of things, if you want to call it that, a prediction. I've been saying from the beginning, I think Cooper lands in Miami. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think first one, if you look at Ohio State had 2 running backs get drafted high, right? They had probably their best running back duo they've had in a long, long time. So Ohio State is a great football pitch. I'm not trying to diminish that. Georgia, I think less than they've had in the past because their running game was so bad. And Etienne probably got drafted lower than he should have. But I think here, the football pitch to a Cooper is, we just had, all these schools that you're after, the best running game of all the schools that you're looking at was Miami last year. That's a fact. You can just look at the stats. We're number 5 in the nation in yards per carry, number 2 in P4 next to Notre Dame. And, we never lost yardage. Our running game was dominant. And that was with Cam Ward doing everything he was doing. I think a guy like Derek Cooper behind that kind of offensive line, Martinez, Fletcher, Lyle, great players. But particularly Fletcher and Martinez, they're not 4-3 backs. And I think a guy like Cooper who runs in that range, I think he's 4.4 laser right now, but with his running a 10.7, I think you're talking about a guy who's going to be a 4-3 back at the next level just based on how he looks on film, the 100-meter time, etc. You're talking about a guy who those same carries, if he gets that kind of daylight, he could go 70 yards with this offense. And of course, Miami's offensive line class, Cooper knows very well. You have the number one player in the country committed in Jackson Cantwell, Joel Irvin, Cannon Pickett, Ben Cogden, who was visiting this weekend and is very, very talented 4-star player. Then you got interior guys, Reese Woodrow, JJ Sparks, just kind of the overall. Cooper knows that just in general, Mario and Mirabal are going to have a top offensive line, regardless of all the names. And he obviously knows a name like Jackson Cantwell. Brett Kaloje, another guy that Ohio State and Georgia are fighting for, could potentially be a Cane as early as this week. We'll talk about that in the future. So with Cooper, you're going to have a good offensive line. You had a good running game last year. And it's Miami. It's home. He's from South Florida. So I think all of that is a factor. And then look, in the NIL side, here's the reality of the whole situation. I do think Miami prioritizes Cooper at the highest level. And look, you're Georgia and Ohio State. First of all, you have local guys you got to take care of. You have certain national guys you have to take care of. And look, I mean, they are a top team. I mean, they spent a lot of money, a lot of good players. I mean, they are the top. I'm not trying to diminish that. They're not Florida State or some of these teams that are more of a joke. But in terms of who needs this guy the most, I think Miami probably does. It's not just a want, it's a need. You have to keep these South Florida 5-stars home. I think Derek Cooper, I think most would agree, is the most talented player in South Florida this year. Calvin Russell, very high upside. Jason Lopez, I think he's going to be a future superstar personally. But I mean, if you're just breaking it down, I think the guy in South Florida this year, most would agree. And if you just look at the recruiting attention, I think it matches, is a Derek Cooper. So this is an absolute need for the Miami Hurricanes. I'll pull up his highlights while I'm talking about him because talk about how fast he is and how much he just runs by guys. Might as well take a look. This is what I'm talking about here with Derek Cooper, who, by the way, I think he'd be absolutely elite on defense too. But look at this. So you see him break a tackle. This is against St. Thomas, pretty good program there in Pitbull Stadium. Dale, look at the speed. 10.7 speed, track star, verified every single way. I mean, the speed could not be more legit. This is against, I believe, Clearwater Catholic, perhaps, in the state championship game. So again, big time stage, and just look at the pure speed of this guy. I think it's just a fit. He's not going to get hit in the backfield for the Miami Hurricanes, so he doesn't have to be one of these super slippery guys who's breaking a million tackles in the backfield because Miami does not have tackles for loss. This is a guy that you give him a runway to, which Miami creates runways, and then boom, this is what he does with the runway. 60, 70-yard touchdown. So I think the fit on the football side is good. Albert's saying, facts, when Georgia and Ohio State talk about a recruit in Miami is close, they bring up NIL. Cooper is a lock. Yeah, I feel very good. Again, this is a guy I felt good about for a while as a Miami Hurricane. I think it makes a lot of sense from a football standpoint. And then, look, I think Miami's going to prioritize him. Nick Isaac saying, all publicity is good publicity. I agree. When you talk about, when everybody's talking about how rich you are, it's pretty good publicity. But, they're not going to overpay for everybody. There's certain guys that I think deserve a lot of money, and this is one of them. You see him blocking a kick. NFL comp for Coop, great question. I not thought about that. Yeah, let's see, an NFL comp for Derek Cooper. I'm going to have to let me look at a list here as I think about this one. It'd be a big back with straight line speed. Wyman Wells, talk about Willis McGahee, who was definitely a big back with elite speed. I think he probably had a little more power, McGahee, than Cooper. But you know what? Honestly, it's not a bad comparison. That's one of the better comparisons I've heard. Bijan Robinson, Trey Kendricks is saying that one. That's someone, Texas is after this guy. I think Bijan Robinson might have had a little bit more side to side than Cooper. Cooper might have some more pure track speed when he puts his foot in the ground and just explodes. Look at him on defense, man. I think this guy'd be an all-world type safety. Brian Robinson from Trucking with Trey, another solid comparison. I think speed-wise, you're going to have an advantage with Cooper. Again, this guy I think is going to be a legitimate 4.3 type guy when it's all said and done. Probably closer in speed to Jahmyr Gibbs, but bigger in size. Maybe not side to side quick as a Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that if you're talking about the weakness with Cooper, I would say he's just not the most he's kind of how do you say, like a straight line runner, straight lines going forward, straight up with his back, straight up physical, but he's not like one of these guys that's close to the ground, juking a million guys out. That's not really what he does. But then this, he does break tackles as you see there. And then this, and he's tough as you see there. And then the speed is there. So yeah, another comparison to McGahee. Listen, if he's half the back McGahee was, we're talking about one of the absolute best players in the country. Over 1,200 on like and subscribe, man. We appreciate you. Another productive guy. I mean, all the guys we talked about here today have been highly productive players and have been, just very talented. Lamar Miller is a guy that I could see some comparison just in terms from a size speed standpoint. I think that Cooper probably has a little more just toughness than Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller wasn't out there playing linebacker. He was a big guy, but Lamar Miller wasn't playing linebacker like that and making plays like that. So that'd be an advantage for a Cooper. But I think a Lamar Miller, as far as like the more recent guys, here's a pretty good comparison here from Hassan Shiab, Todd Gurley. I'm not saying he's as good and as powerful as Gurley. I mean, Gurley was really a monster before he got hurt. I mean, Gurley was as good as it gets, but I do see some similarities with Gurley. I think that is a great comparison. Austrian Empire says, hey, D-Money, talk to Isla. See if they're interested in opening up a location at the Brightline Miami Station Dining Pavilion. Yeah, that just opened. I will talk to them about that at Islas Canarias. That's actually where I work. I'll probably be there later today at the Brightline Station. So if you're out there, look out for me. Shout out. But yeah, look at this guy running inside. A lot of discussion about who, that's another good one too from Apollo Sayer. Najee Davenport from Miami Central, who people forget because he got injured against Ohio State, but this guy was incredible. He was like the original size speed back for the Canes. He was an upright runner, also played linebacker, also played fullback for the Canes, ran a 4.4. Great. I like that one. I mean, Najee was really thick. I think he's probably a little thicker build than Cooper. Cooper's big and like tall and lean, but I mean, he's not as like just thick as a Najee Davenport, but I can see that comp. I could definitely see that comp, old school one from Apollo Sayer. But while we're talking about Islas Canais, we'll save that spot. Let's keep watching these highlights for Cooper, man, because I'm enjoying them. There you see him running against St. Thomas. There you see him catching the ball. This is something that he did very well against in the Under Armour All-America game. So Cooper went to the Under Armour All-America game, played as an underclassman, which is the new thing that they have now because so many people were missing the game. You can say Thomas there. So many people were missing that game just for injury or just to protect themselves or because they were early enrolling. Some people were already practicing with their teams that were in bowl games or playoff games. So because of that, the Under Armour game, which used to only feature guys about to get to college, seniors, they decided to start taking underclassmen. Jordan Campbell, linebacker commit, played well there. Jackson Cantwell played there. Some other guys, but Cooper's one that when you watch him in that game, not only did he look very good in that game, he also caught passes. And I think that's something that you see a little bit on this, but he does have that ability to catch. You see him playing linebacker. This is where I think he could be like all world, but everybody wants to play offense. What can you do? Questions about Cooper that we're getting or about the running back position in general is how do you think it shakes out? Javion Mallory visited this past weekend. He's saying all the right things, but he had visited Alabama the weekend before. Jay Lamar visited before that, had a great visit. Jay Lamar, top 10 back out of Colquitt County, Georgia. He is a major target. He visited Georgia this past week. So Mallory was here. Last weekend, Mallory was in Alabama. Jay Lamar was in Miami. This weekend, Javion Mallory was a 4-star commitment from West Boca. He was in Miami this weekend. Jay Lamar then was at Georgia. Question is, who ends up being our second back in the class if we get a Derek Cooper, who I think his spot is reserved? Do we stay with Mallory, who committed to us but took a visit that we didn't love to Alabama? Do we go with Jay Lamar, who's an extremely physically gifted back from Colquitt County, top 10 back in the country, to pair with Derek Cooper, probably giving us the most electrifying group of players at that position that we've had in a long time? We'll see. I mean, again, I've always gotten a lot of Jay Lamar buzz. I've not gotten the follow-up buzz since he visited Georgia, but I know there was a lot of buzz there coming out of his visit, talking to sources. He's an extremely talented player. He has family, or I don't know if they're actual cousins or like what we call Cuban cousins in our world, but just kind of just close friend. But he's really tight with Nikar and Kamal Bonner from Moultrie, Georgia, Colquitt County, Georgia, same town. Both on the Canes. Kamal Bonner, linebacker that we just got from NC State as a portal kid. Nikar 4-star wide receiver, top 75 overall prospect a couple years ago, who is a receiver for the Canes. So there's some ties to Jay Lamar. Mallory's the local kid. Mallory's already committed. We'll see how that visit went with Jay Lamar in Georgia, but I could see a Jay Lamar in this class. So here, Jacob. So this is a comparison I've seen, and he's not crazy with this one. He says, it's not going to be a popular statement. I get it, but he kind of reminds me of Lorenzo Lingard out of high school. Another upright runner, a lot of guy with a lot of speed, a lot of another highly rated guy. I think they're rated pretty much identically. So I will say this, you're not out of line there, Jacob, with that comp. I see the upright running. I see the just kind of the pure speed. I think they both ran 10.7 in high school, so the speed part was there. I will say the difference is having seen in person both of these guys, stood right next to both. I would say that there's more size with Derek Cooper. Lingard was billed as a bigger back, but then when you see him in person, he just wasn't like he wasn't that big. Like he had like very, very skinny legs for whatever reason. He just didn't look big in person. He looked bigger on film than he did in person. Cooper, I've seen in person. I know he's been weighed and measured and all that kind of stuff that they do at these camps. He's one of the more highly evaluated players in the country. But I think just looking at him, he's bigger. He's bigger than Lorenzo Lingard. So we'll see with that. So that's the Derek Cooper story. Some more questions here as we get off to other topics. New King God saying 247 is reporting they expect Vance Spafford to flip to the Canes. I'll take that. You saw Dennis Smith's flip tweet yesterday. Who was that about? Was that about Vance Spafford? We'll see. I think that'd be a huge get. New King God also asked, did you see Gabby's mock 247 mock class? I did, and I thought it was a good one. You know, I agree with most of those guys that were listed on there. Let me pull up the mock class. We'll give Gabby a shout out here. I hope we're not giving him problems here. I think this is free publicity, so he's not going to care. Shout out Gabby. Shout out 247. Again, I know they're technically competitors, but they do a great job. And just look at some of the names on Gabby's list. He expects us to get Jay Lamar instead of Javian Mallory. That wouldn't shock me. We talked about Vance Spafford, Tyron Evans, has Jason Lopez in the class, which again, I think just because Mario's so hot on Jason Lopez, and I personally agree with that evaluation. I think Jason Lopez is absolutely elite. I can see that. Izzy Briggs and Zachary Turner, we talked about on the show. At offensive line, the guy really at issue is Brett Koloje, who's visited Georgia, visited USC, visited Tennessee. I like Miami for Koloje, so I agree with that. I just think it's kind of like a Cantwell. He's always wanted to be at Miami, and now it's a matter of just him going through his process, and ultimately we get that one done. He's visited a million times, and I think he'll start very quickly at guard. He could probably start right away at some schools. Not saying he'd do it at Miami, but he would do it here. Wide receiver, there was no Keys or Russell. I think that's one thing you can God mention. What's up, Lord Baconton? New profile pic. But I could see us get, like, again, talking to my sources before I left the Philly last week, they were confident that they think they can get something done with either Keys or Russell or both when it's all said and done. Obviously, there's going to be tremendous competition for both those guys. Keys currently committed to LSU. Russell, I think, trending to LSU. Tennessee's also there with Keys. But I think the Adidas factor with Keys is going to be huge. Tennessee's also looking like an Adidas school, so that'll be a battle there. Tennessee, I think the best card they have to play is the fact that the number one quarterback's there. Again, I'm not a big guy. I'm not big on getting high school quarterbacks and spending big money, but it is, one of the benefits of doing that is he was with Keys on his visit, so that'll be a selling point. But I think Miami has a chance to get that one done, and they're confident on it. So we'll see. That's one thing that's glaring from Gabby's mock class, which otherwise kind of is optimistic and has this as a top 5 type class. And that's something to watch. Again, I get a lot of confidence with those two, but I can see the skepticism. Freddie Wilson, who I think is going to be, like I said, a depth guy that could potentially develop into something. I get the appeal there. James Johnson, who I reported going to the weekend, Miami was the favorite. Big-time defense alignment from Northwestern, originally from Fort Myers. Texas, Georgia, big-time schools in the mix there. But I had a lot of optimism going into the weekend, and I haven't heard different. Charles committed, Bacon committed, Anthony Jones, Tank Jones. That's a big one. That would be a big win. Miami's battling Auburn there, the Mobile, Alabama product. I know there was a lot of optimism coming out of his visit. He's one that visited unofficially in the spring, so we'll see. I think that's very possible. Nolan Wilson, Gabby has him going to the Canes. Picayune, Mississippi. This is the place. I mean, we're talking about places where Miami does not win SEC battles in the past, and Mario's been able to kind of penetrate a little bit. He visited this past weekend. A lot of optimism on him coming out of the visit. We'll see. Those Southern visits, you got to wait till they get out of here and go home. Linebacker, he has us getting DQ Forkpa on top of the guys committed, who would be nice as a fast, big, highly good measurable guy from IMG, originally from Georgia, visited this past weekend. And then he's got his flipping Brody Jennings, which I agree with, from Michigan, and safety Devin Jackson and Blake Stewart, which would be the dream class at safety. So optimistic, but I think, very, very possible there at safety. Man, I'm sweating out here. When I don't got Pete out here, I'm working twice as hard. So I'm shiny out here on the video. Nick Isaac saying, can you see Nick Lanier, the Miami Northwestern wide receiver, reclassifying his best player on that team? I've heard that, and I think he could, but Miami's not really involved in that. They're not trying to get guys away from Teddy Bridgewater. Some folks that where they're at. You don't have to worry about where they're going, where they're at. They're always there for you. That's Miami Hurricane Team Store, MiamiHTS.com. Use promo code InSight20 for 20% off the hats. All the stuff at the store. You can go in person to the Miami Hurricane Team Store across the street from the University of Miami. Look at all this great stuff. Adidas stuff for your pets, shorts. It's the summer. It's hot. As you can see, I'm sweating. The jerseys, you name it, you can get it at the Miami Hurricane Team Store right there across the street from the University of Miami, or you can just go to MiamiHTS.com. Use promo code InSight20 for 20% off. All right, everybody, almost 1,500 on. Appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe to the show. We will be back on tomorrow. Hopefully get Pete on. But CanesInSight.com is pumping. So keep track of all the latest on there. 7.44 million posts and counting. Go Canes.